to know what would be the requirements, so what actually is needed to be built. And then we have to think how we can provide reusability in this approach. So it at the beginning might take a little bit longer. However, if you will get used to it, it will get a piece of cake and will increase your efficiency. So examples of reusable code. For example, we took the simplest one available, header and footer. We can have a little bit more complex scenario, date time picker and confirmation pop-up. Yes, lately, 1 week ago, Microsoft actually announced that we will have a confirmation pop-up built in Canvas apps, but still, I've built plenty of confirmation pop-ups with plenty of custom logics as components reusable in plenty of screens, staying with the same great UI and UX approach for end users. And where we should actually start to create reusable code, we have to put under understanding two types of the approach. First is the reusable PowerApps code. And the second one is reusable user interface. So what users actually can see. So what would be the benefits? Actually, those are not benefits. This is this is my mistake. It's supposed to be approach we should take. So at the beginning, starting easy, we got global variables. We got collections to store our data. Then we have this UI approach for components. Then we got named formulas and user-defined functions. So from coding perspective, we can say we got somehow pretty much 4 different approaches that we can proceed with. And for user interface, it's only components. I know I've said that components are also included in code because yes, you can create no user interface for component, provide input parameters and create some calculations to be provided as the output of our component, but mainly and mostly it is best to use components for user interface reusability. So after this quick introduction, let's dive inside variables. We got 3 types of variables available in Canvas apps: global variables, local, and one-time. I actually call one-time variables a temporary variable, and this table actually is taken from Matthew Denaway blog. He's a great Power Platform community member, sharing a lot of details about PowerApps, Power Automate, and Copilot. So if you never heard about my Matthew, I highly encourage you to go on his blog and check what he's offering to the community. So from variables perspective, global perspective is the one that is defined by set function. And it is available across all our application. It is stored within our application memory, and we have the power to update it whenever we want. But with this updating, we have to be careful because if we will not proceed with the same data structure in the variable, we might impact another screens in our application reusing this global variable. And even though I've provided you the comparison from reusability perspective, the most important is global one because it's available everyone. So once defined, available in each and every screen. And the local variable is actually available on the screen that we call it alive. Of course, we can make it to be on another screen with navigate function. However, it's not that reusable. So from variables into collections, into storing our data. So collections are allowing us to get information, get our data from data source and store them locally inside the application. So we do not have to ask every time for the data. We can cache them. We can run crude operations. We can update, we can delete items, and they are not saved in our application whenever the application is closed. We have to store the data to our data source to be sure it's available to our users next time. It is amazing for storing the data, any user input and manipulation of the data values before we actually save it to our application. So here is example of a table that we can store inside a collection. How to create a collection? We use a function clear collect. We provide it a name and, for example, provide a data source from a SharePoint list or Dataverse. This is really easy to use, and we do not have to actually use collections directly with the data sources. We can create something from scratch. Like on this example, I've created a navigation menu for my sidebar navigation, where I provided free objects. So we can say there are free records in a table with three columns: name, icon, and ID. I will be able to have this collection available on each screen on my application. I will be able to manipulate with PowerFX what is visible to the users. I can sort by ID, or I can say that I would like to hide ID-free release notes for some kind of a personas, like regular users will not see release notes, but managers, vice presidents, senior management will see all the informations from there. Then from variables and collections into named formulas. So what are named formulas and where they are available? So named formulas are available to us through application of Canvas apps application metadata on the formula bar, app.formulas. It is a centralized place of definition. So we put every named formula inside one place. And this is really important because this increases the time of any change. For global variables, for collections, actually for each type of a variable, we need to have a trigger that will make our collection or variable comes to life to get the data. So there needs to be an action. For name formulas, no action actually is needed. So they are available across the application, all over the application, the same as global variables, but they are available when needed. So we don't need any action from our user to have them. Our Canvas apps will actually interpret when named formula is needed and will call it alive. As I already mentioned, this is single source of truth with centralized definition, which is perfect. It's easing our life a lot, especially during the maintenance phase when we can get the application from someone else to cover it. The one thing is we cannot update the name formula in any other place in application than app.formulas. So you have to bear in mind that with collections and variables, you can always change its value. For named formulas, it's not possible. We have to make it be needed again. This is a great example based on a time, which I will provide to you. And another really critical information is the power of referencing. If we would like to proceed with for example, manager information based on a logged user metadata, then in our formulas, we'll look if we do have available information of logged user to look for manager. So we can reference between named formulas in non-ordered approach, as long they not create a circle of reference. So they always refer to each other. So let's present this under the coding example. Based on our manager example, you can see that here it does not matter if I will put a user formula before manager or manager will be up first, because what I have is the flexibility of the order. Using classical approach with variables, this is not possible. Unfortunately, the header of variables disappeared. So on the left side, we have named formulas. On the right side, we do have approach of creating simultaneously in two threads by concurrent function two global variables. Exactly the same approach. And as you can see, the code is showing us an error. We cannot proceed with calling global user manager variable if the user variable is not defined. Why I've showed you this on example of concurrent? Because if we would go outside of a concurrent with sequential load, it means that one function is loaded after another, and we would provide a manager function to be first. It will not show us any errors, but it will not get any value because of the input is empty, it's blank. It is actually defined later in the code. So the PowerApps interpreter reads, it's possible to do, but will provide you no proper information. And in concurrent word, it actually showed an error which is helping. Here is a wall of text of named formulas information that is really good to know. And I will get quickly through them, but you exactly know what this means because I've mentioned that to you. So formulas value can refer to each other in any order as long as they do not create this circular reference. The formula value is always up to date. So whenever we need it, it comes to life. And then whenever we need it, it disappears. It's cleared from our memory. However, we cannot force it to have the newest values. So this is really important that the formula's definition is immutable. We have single source of truth, and the formula calculation can be deferred. So as a comparison with variables, so you exactly know what are the similarities and differences. Variables, we need to create a code to set the definition and declaring place. Then we have to have a trigger, an action like opening a screen or a user clicks on a button for this variable to come to life and have its proper value. And named formulas, we define it in single place and they are available where needed. So those two are really big differences. If we look from performance perspective, after our global variable is initialized, it is always stored in our memory. We can, of course, clear it to be blank. However, it's not exactly the same as with named formulas when it's supposed to release all the necessary information that is speeding up our application performance. We cannot update named formula. We can update it inside the code, but we cannot force it by any action to be updated unless we need it again. And from variables perspective, we can update it by any action, anytime, whenever we want it or need it. So from named formulas perspective, I want to show you that there is plenty of possibilities and it's really powerful. We can define numbers, floats and ints, booleans, date and time values. We can provide tables, basic tables. We can provide more complex tables. Of course, status is not a complex table, but we would be able to extend it more. And based on date and time approach, you can see that we can integrate plenty of PowerFX code to get what we want from the name formula. So here is the perfect example that I've created a named formula. I displayed it on the screen. And is there anything interesting that you can actually see on these examples? It's the time. I told you that named formula comes to life whenever it's needed. And here on 3:59 p.m. when I was testing it 1.5 years ago, I've discovered that the first variable was the first named formula showed me this exact time I needed it. I closed my screen. I went to named formulas, created a second named formula that is showing only time. I went back to a screen and created a label to display new time. I've added this to the screen, played my application, and it loaded with new time. So this is the main information that I would like you to take with you out from this session as one of the key takeaways. It is actually being called alive whenever we need it. And this 1 minute value shows us that this 1 minute value difference shows us that even if we will be on the screen for 5 minutes, the time will not update. It will be valid at the time when we needed named formula. And how I, for example, use the name formula. So this will be a real use case from the development world. In our Canvas apps, we can analyze the size of the current device by breadcrumbs. So here is a table of the definition from Microsoft documentation. And I've created a little bit more complex scenario of named formula with PowerFX code, analyzing within temporary variable, current size of the application, and displaying it as a text. So look here, I've run this on my phone, I've run this on my tablet, and I've got two different values. So this is really powerful because, for example, we can use named formula to calculate for us what font size we should use in our application and just put the font size to be named formula calculation. This is amazing. We can, with this functionality, we can provide one function and just implement it, the value in the application. And depending on the outcome, in this example is the screen size, we can manipulate plenty of other things. So this is the real power of reusability. So you might ask, we already know what is the difference between named formulas and global variables, but what about the collections? Because we can still use them. This is 100% true. We can use named formulas to act as collections, as tables. Exactly, they will never work like collections. They are like a collection, just storing table data. We can connect it to the data source, but we are not able to manipulate the data of named formula table with users' actions. We are able to manipulate collections with updating it, adding new record, removing records. We can add some additional error handling into it. So I would recommend to proceed with named formulas from table perspective for quite static examples, like our application sidebar navigation or defined filtering tabs. So this would work perfect. We can, of course, connect it to the data source. However, we cannot influence the update of the data source values to be the newest from the data source in 5 minutes. We will need that again to be called alive by needing it again. This is really important. From named formulas, we'll go into user-defined functions, which is another named formula approach. So some of you might need to turn on user-defined functions in your PowerApps settings. You can look for UDFs via search bar and just turn it on. If it's on, it's really great because right now you have the full power of creating really complex functions, and we were missing it in Canvas apps for years. So it is available in exactly the same place as formulas. So please do not look for app.user-defined functions. It's app.formulas. It's exactly the same place. How we structure user-defined function. So the syntax is that we provide the name. Inside, we define what parameter we want the data to be working with. We define the type of that parameter. And at the end, we are defining the output of our parameter. And then it equals the formula. So I usually use prefix called UDF based from the name. So then I know whenever I start typing UDF in PowerFX, it will auto-suggest me my user-defined functions. So based on this time I've already presented to you, let's proceed with time approach. UDF start time will provide us the list of types that we can use. We get Boolean numbers, date, time, goods, hyperlink. We've got untyped objects. There's plenty of things we can use, and it's really, really helpful to create a reusable code. And if we want to create reusable code, we need to know the scenario, as I mentioned to you. Me personally, I'm working a lot with dates. So I've realized that PowerApps do not have a proper functionality to provide difference of a time based on minutes. If we will provide time difference function, daytime difference function, on 2 minutes difference on 23:59, 11:59 p.m. and 1 minute after midnight, from calendar perspective, it is whole day, but actually it's 2 minutes. So if we want to be clear with minutes, we have to create it by ourselves. And I've created user-defined function that is taking start time and end time as input parameters. As output, I would like to have a text. I'm defining all my logic within PowerFX, practically fully supported. So with temporary function, I'm getting information about the time difference in minutes between two dates. Then I'm setting up how many minutes I have in hour and how many minutes I have in day. Next, I proceed with the switch statement that is checking if actually end time is not bigger than start time to be sure that the data are provided properly. So I've created some kind of an error handling approach for my data. And next, I've continued to write my code. So now I can use this date time difference function everywhere in my application, simply writing UDF underscore date difference and provide parameters. It is really, really powerful. In regular Word, without reusable code, you would create this function once and copy paste it every place you need it in application. If you would need it 1 week from now, you would have to look where you had it, which is really awful from your perspective as citizen developer, consultant developer. You would be just annoyed where I did it, where it is. And then if anything will change in your function, you have to change it everywhere. What a nightmare, right? So let's provide with our example. How much time left from my colleague from Poland, well known across the world, Tomasz Poszytek, MVP session at Polish community. I've created this provided this code inside a label and use our time values. As you can see, I've provided the datetime value manually, type it down, and next I provided now function, which is providing us the current date and time. So those are my inputs data. And here at the screen, I will have everything what I wanted with my output data. So how much time left? 404 days, 16 minutes. So user-defined functions are allowing us to fully utilize PowerFX functionalities, like with statements, temporary variables, like switch, and other great functions over there. Important news for you. If you already knew about user-defined functions, that last year, almost a year ago, Microsoft announced that we can include behavioral functions. Previously, we could not use user-defined functions to set a variable, create a collection, or reset things, notify. It was not possible. For almost 1 year, you can create reusable function that will be creating your collection based on your needs. So look at the perspective that on each screen you would like to get the new data whenever you navigate between your application. You would be able to create one function and reuse it to gather the data, which is incredibly easy from perspective of maintenance and providing some changes. We spoke about plenty of code approaches. Let's navigate to components which are allowing us to create also user interface reusable items. So what are components? Those are reusable building blocks in PowerApps that allow us to bundle UI and code into a single unit that can be reused all over our application in each and every screen. This is amazing because we can stay consistent with our code, with our UI. So our users, they are having a seamless journey across all our application because everything will look similar. We are having this consistency and building a great connection of our system with end users. Next to components, we have component libraries. Component libraries are not that often referred now. I think it's because of current approach of a YAML code, but component libraries allowed us to create so-called application, standalone application that stored components as references for other applications. So I would be able to create this component library, define a look and feel of plenty of items, and then share it across my environment and allow users to just grab from this reusable piece of library to get components inside my application. And even better, I will be able to create a local copy of component inside my Canvas apps and then provide all the necessary changes that I need for my particular scenario. So this is allowing us to go even further with reusable code because we spoke about reusing code in single application and component libraries were the tool to allow to share a logic between multiple applications. Main differences: component library is central place to store and manage multiple components. They are not directly usable by the users. So we have to grab them and import them to our applications in plural, yes. And if we would like to update the component library, then the change would be pushed to other applications. And of course, we have to republish them. By default, something will not be changed for our users. And components are the best if we are talking of our efficiency of reusable code inside a single application. We got this reusable UI, coding, creating one time and referring into all the necessary places. Our components are available to us in PowerApps just next to screens. There is a component tab, and over there you can see all the components you've created. You can create new components, you can export them and import to your application from component libraries. So it's really easy to use. But before you will start your work with components, you have to be aware that components by default do not have access to your application data scope. What does it mean? If you will connect your application to SharePoint lists, you're connected to Dataverse tables, your component will not be able to see those data source relations. So we have to enable access app scope to be 100% sure that those are visible. You do not have to enable it you can stay and provide input properties like collection variables, named formulas, or user-defined functions to be available inside your component. So you can always provide extra security to it. Me personally, I always turn the access app scope and I have access directly to what I need inside a component without passing additional parameters. Of course, I pass parameters to define items, but we'll get into this soon. So components allows us to create already mentioned by me site-by navigation. So we can get our component, create a gallery, add some containers for responsiveness and pixel perfect allocation, build some of additional logic, and then we can reuse our site-by navigation across our whole application, allowing user to see the same sidebar all across the app with options to be navigated to each functionality they would proceed with. That's great. And now we spoke that there is option to connect to the data of the application, but how to work with the data? The input and output parameters are what allows our component to communicate with the application in dynamic, interactive, and reusable way. So we've got input and output. We already covered this approach, right? So what is an input parameter? It's pretty much defined with the name. So this is information that we would like to pass inside as a data source. It can be a text, a number, a boolean, date and time, even better, a screen, table, record, color, audio, video. There's so many options that for sure you will something visible for your reusable component. Now, in approach of header and footer, personally, I create reusable headers and passing the header text value to the component. So then I add it on each screen, and on each screen I can define a different input. So if the user would come to me and say, hey, on screen of issues, I would like to change the naming convention, maybe not the user, maybe a stakeholder, a business owner of the application, but they would like to provide a change. I exactly know where to look, and this change will be really quick, really beneficial. And if we will select our component after we've created an input, we are able to get information of it and set default value of it inside the dropdown we have on the top. From options of the component, we just select our new custom property. Okay, and what is the output parameter? Output parameter is what goes out to the application from our component. So we can create a logic that manipulates the input to something, manipulate, change, update, and then push out the final result to the user. Okay, so for the output data types, they are exactly the same as for input, text, number, boolean, table, record, image, plenty of choices. So time for real life example, but this time it will be much easier than calculating the date-time difference because we will not be able to use it across one single screen plenty of times to calculate the proper value. It is possible, but it would be more difficult than for user-defined functions. So let's do some simple math manipulation, like we would be willing to create a calculator. We provide our inputs as numbers. We define our output as a number. We create a reusable UI interface that is just displaying our outcome parameter. So I can select my component, go to a output parameter called multiply, and then provide a code, what I would like to do. And here it is great example because you can see that at the PowerFX code that I'm referring to the name of our component to get the value of the input. And this is how component works. We define a name, and on each screen, you have to be sure that components have different names. Canvas apps will not allow you to save with the same name. It will always automatically add this _1 into it. So please be sure you name them properly. Okay, so from the input types, you know that there is plenty of them. Still, I wanted to present you that everything works beautifully, and this is actually based on the named formulas input. So this is also proof that we can provide PowerFX inside input and output, because we defined inputs as float and integer from our previous example of named formulas. And look here, we are creating reusable code inside named formulas or user-defined functions, and then we are passing it into the component. So we are increasing reusability. I would call it reusability inception. I don't know if you agree with me. So you can import and export components. I've already covered this part with component libraries, but I just want to make sure that you know that we can always import components from other application or libraries, or we can export them to reuse in different applications, enabling consistency, quicker development, and scalable architecture. To be honest with you, I haven't exported my components for a while. Like this component library, it seems like it does not exist that much in Power Platform world anymore. So this is great option to validate what is available and what is the roadmap for the future. However, if you would like to import and export components, you've got those two icons inside the components. It is really quick, really easy, and it will improve your reusability approach in the future. Okay, so we've been with some theory, but I would like to provide you a real-life example of reusable components in one screen. So this is the Polish community I'm running, our meetup information. So we've got two speakers on the session, one PowerApps screen. Can you tell me how many reusable items are on this one particular screen? So let's start. Header, it's a component. In our user photo, inside a component is based on named formula. Title of a header is dynamically passed parameter. Our gallery was created in named formula. And yes, you can see I've added pictures to named formula. So this is amazing. This shows you that how many options you can actually fit in a really simple screen from a reusability perspective, not even knowing about it. Of course, for the users, you as developers, consultants, you of course would know when you develop it, right? Okay, time for key takeaways as we are heading to the end. So main benefits. We have to split into two pieces from development and business perspective. So from development, what benefits we have? What do you think? And how many of them we have? I would say four. Yes, we promote consistency. We have good practices. We increase readability across our team, developers, and from maintenance perspective. It is much quicker to provide changes or fix the application, even if you haven't developed it, if always we proceed with good practices. So, as a summary, from development perspective, consistency, good practices, readability, and enhanced maintenance and changes. What about the business benefits? Because of course we create business application, we have to have this justification to create something for someone to pay for it. So if we work in consultancy, we are developing it in-house for our colleagues from the company, we might have few really good benefits. What do you think? How many we have? Of course, I would say again, 4. We got quicker development. If we will start reusing a lot, we will save time during the development. At the beginning, it might take a little bit longer, but from the longer perspective, we will save time and develop quicker. We can maintain quicker. So our end user stakeholders are happy how quick we can fix or change things. We can provide quicker onboarding to the application and time to market. So here is the slide containing all of those business benefits together. But what is the most important benefit that drives business? Money. Everything we spoke about from our perspective as developers, it's great because it's techy, we can explore, we can learn, we have our own agenda of feeling the satisfaction of developing something cool or really good and in the efficient way. But business would like to get application quickly and is not willing to pay that much for it. So if we learn how to properly use all the techniques of reusable code I've mentioned, we will go quickly, much quicker to the market, making customer even happy. And sometimes quicker development does not have to mean that you earn less. Sometimes companies pay to get really good outcome really, really quickly. Okay, I promise you URLs. You have 3 here. That will allow you to get a little bit more information during this session. And after approximately 30 seconds, I will change a slide for the next 2. Meantime, if there are any questions, I'm here with you. I'm open for conversation. If you prefer not to ask them online, that everyone here will hear it, hit me on LinkedIn. Send me a message. Okay, next to QR codes, I'll give you a moment also, and then we can either start our discussion or I would be able to say thank you. And of course, actually, I will say thank you before we start any Q&A. So thank you very much for being with us. Thank you very much for the opportunity to be here, Mohammed, and the whole organizing team of Global Power Platform Bootcamp Saudi Arabia. I hope you managed to get at least some new information or it clarifies what you already knew in a structured way and allowed you to continue with your future of reusable code in Canvas apps. So, time for questions.
الفيديو ده برعاية رشيد. مع رشيد إحنا معاك طول الطريق وهنبسطها لك من غير تعقيد. اعمل سكان للQR كود ده أو ادخل على rashid.pro وهتلاقي كل الجديد.